So welcome to the Alphagenix podcast. I'm Dr. Max, lead clinician at Alphagenix, and today I'm delighted to welcome Will Loiseau, who is a holistic sports nutrition coach and author. Welcome, Will.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dr. Max.
Absolute pleasure, man. So for those of you who haven't read the book, perhaps, or spoken to you before, tell us a little bit about your background and what it is you do, and then we can maybe look at the book in more detail as well.
Yeah, so in 2011, I became certified as a personal trainer and a holistic sports nutritional consultant and practitioner. And I had just come back from a traumatic situation, an earthquake situation in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And I just felt the need to detox and to get right. I just felt like I wasn't right. So I started studying ways where I can improve my health, because I had been going through some common symptoms that a lot of people have been going through around me. And it just made a lot of sense. So I started studying, and, it just became to the point where I was like, let me just keep going in this direction. And I decided to get certified. And once I became certified, that's when it became serious. And then I just started dedicating more time on a professional level to helping other people who were having these symptoms and were having these problems. And when I started to make a difference, it's a gratifying feeling. And that's how it started.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a personal journey. Was it originally then designed around getting yourself feeling better? Was it almost self-discovery, self-medicating almost, to get yourself on the right track?
Yeah, that's what it was, because I knew that I wasn't functioning on the level that I knew I could, and I knew that I had to go deep inside to get some things out and kind of like reset, and that's definitely where it started. And I envisioned myself helping people, right, in some sort of way. So I said, all right, if I can prove from an example or prove from a standpoint of, okay, I can do it, so let me help other people to get on that same wavelength, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you used yourself almost as the proofs in the pudding. You use yourself as the case study. Yeah. What avenues? Obviously, having read the book, you can see because you mentioned Haiti there as well, and that horrible event. And you can see in the book that often and I'll mention the book now, it's Young at Any Age, The Secrets to Slowing the Aging Process, which I highly recommend. But you comment in the book quite a lot, and often the chapters start with a personal, history where you link it to maybe some culture from the past, whether it's about diet, sort of classic diet cultural links. You talk about food habits, things like that. How has that shaped your work looking at the sort of the cultural aspects of health as well?
Yeah. A lot of us, we come from a background where we all have cultural differences, but those cultural moments that we spend with our families and friends, those are really powerful, and they really form and shape the way that we live our lives. So some of these things I noticed were working in my benefit, and some of these things I noticed that they weren't. So it's very difficult to make changes because you associate the foods that you eat with times that you're spending. Like, you could remember a certain time based off of a meal. Like, you eat a meal and automatically brings you to a certain time, but through my research, I started to discover that the reason why so many of the people around me, my friends and family members, were suffering, symptoms, I was asking why is everyone, so many people dying at early ages, or, not operating on a high level. And then when I started to do the research, I had to break some cultural norms. And, that created some friction in the beginning with certain family members, because, it's like, hey, what are you doing? You're doing something different now. We grew up doing this, and now you're doing something different. So, it was a process, but definitely something that, one of the best things I've ever done in my life was to study that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what makes it nice about the book, and we'll touch upon the book a little bit more as well, but is it gives it that personal edge. You know, you're not just stating scientific facts. It's not just sort of science at a root cause. It's you tell the background history to your own story. How did when you got certified and you started being able to help other people, at what point did you look at writing a book about it and spreading the word in that way? Because it's a different mechanism, isn't it, in terms of working one-on-one with clients and then writing a book, and you obviously have that ability on the other side of it. So not the scientific side, you've also got the authoring capabilities, which I think I would lack. But how did that book come about?
Yeah, well, I had read, I was always interested in this subject. So I had read books, and, I'd go to the bookstore and I'd read books about health and about fitness, and I didn't see what I wanted. So the book that I wrote was the book that I always wanted to read. And some of the books were just too technical. I can get technical. I mean, I did become certified. I did have to do a lot of studying to get certified. It's a lot of hard work. As a doctor, the strenuous amounts of time that you have to spend studying and all that. But for the average person who just wants to know what to do, it can be a little bit too much. So I just wanted to break things down and put it into a story form and break it down from a personal standpoint. And, it was easy for me to read. It was easier for me to write. And I just want people to come across with things, tangible things that they can just implement in their life and make it easier. So I just started writing the book because I just started getting so many, I guess, like you said, working with my clients, I just started getting so many stories that I'm like, wow, people need to hear about this. People need to hear about the struggles that people are going through and how certain people are overcoming these struggles. People need to hear about this. So I just started writing it down, and then, slowly became a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like stories rather than facts and data have more impact on people as well, don't they? It's more of an interesting read, but also it's easier to stick in their heads, I imagine, as well. Did you always have that side of it where you were quite into the sort of the storytelling aspects of it, as well as the science behind it, as well? Has that been something that you had when you were growing up and things?
Yeah, I was always, the thing is that I was always interested in science, but I never did good in science. I was more the individual who would, go out and play with my friends, and we would do science. You know what I mean? And we would just experiment with animals out in nature. And that's how I learned. So I didn't really learn that well from a classroom standpoint. I was more, show it to me, but let me do it. And then that's how I started to learn. So I was always into science, and writing has just been an ability that I've had from a young age. So I just married the two. And I said, let me just use this as a tool to try to, help people on their path.
Yeah. Yeah. When you mention about people associating meals with good times, or perhaps like maybe misassociating the food with the good time, rather than, because what you mentioned in the book as well is about the importance of like socializing and like a connection with other people. Do you think that's still, is that something that we maybe see in the Western culture as well? You're talking about things like, for example, in the UK, Christmas time, where people often massively overindulge in food, alcohol, and things like that. And they maybe associate that with the fun times, whereas actually perhaps what it is the whole family's gathered, everyone's, seeing long lost friends or family or relatives. Is that something that you see in the West still going on today? Because when I read it, it kind of clicked with me. And when you've said it there, it kind of clicked with me that, yeah, maybe that is something that we still do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I've never been to the UK. I hope to go one day, but I think here in the States it's actually worse, because it's deep into the fabric of society, where wherever you need to celebrate something, or whether it's a lunch break at work, it's always celebrated with food. And when you're in an environment where you're surrounded by unhealthy choices, it just compounds things. You know what I mean? So, like you said, when it comes to the holiday season, you're bombarded with commercials on the television, on the radio, or wherever you're at. And, a lot of those are unhealthy choices. And those are deeply rooted to family and friends and culture. And it's very difficult to get away from that. So when you're not getting the information as far as what you should be consuming in order to keep yourself on a healthier path so that you're not going to get older and start deteriorating, it's difficult out here to try to find that right information because there's so many conflicting sources.
Yeah. And I think there's the other thing to remember, there's always financial incentives for people to maybe eat too much and drink too much and consume a lot, isn't there, really? So there's always that, like you said, about advertising, influencing people's decision-making. It's a hard thing to break. How did you find it personally when you said about doing your own learning journey and looking back at the sort of the traditions almost with the food and things like that, and taking the good and looking maybe at the bad side of it as well? How was that on a personal level to try and change that around? Did you find there was a bit of resistance internally as well? Because you said about family, friends questioning it. How was it on an internal battle? Because I found that quite interesting as well.
Yeah, I think that it was, they say that there's always something positive that you can take from an adverse situation. And coming back from that adverse situation, one of the things that was beneficial to me was the fact that I had the ability to focus, because I was just had so many things in my mind, and I used writing as a tool of therapy. So I really was able to just block out a lot of distractions and just write and read and study. And that's what helped me to just stay on the path, because it is challenging when everyone and everything around you is saying something different and you're trying to go in another direction. It's very difficult, but I was just in the right time in the right place to be able to focus. So there was a little bit of friction with family and friends, but the more that I educated myself and the more that I was able to back my actions with actual, studies and knowledge, it just became easier. And, I think it's extremely important for you to know what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Because if you don't have that compass, then it's going to be easy to go to the left or the right and just fall off the path.
Yeah. We often say that with patients of the clinic as well. It's kind of like, if people can understand the idea of what we're doing rather than just being told this is what you need to do, it's quite helpful in the chances of them actually going through with it, if they can actually understand and appreciate the logic behind it as well. Yeah. So tell me about any sort of, if the people are watching and listening, I wanted to touch upon as well about the benefits, because you mentioned even one of the chapters is about rediscovering the sort of the necessity of getting outdoors. Was it something like that, using the park as medicine almost? How did you stumble across that information, and how does people talk about nature bathing and things like that? How does that help it on a health status, would you say? Because nowadays that's a big issue, isn't it? People aren't spending enough time outdoors. We were talking offline, and I was saying about how bad the weather this summer has been in the UK, and it's certainly reduced my inclination to get outdoors. But on a personal level, how important can that be for people just to get out there and experience nature again?
It's funny. It's like I wrote in the book. I mean, when I was a kid, it was natural for us to go outside. Our parents used to just, say, all right, go outside and do what you do and just be back before the sun comes down. I mean, that was what we did. I mean, did we play video games? Sure, we played video games just like other kids, and we did have some time inside, but we were dying to get outside, And when we went outside, it was exploration. no one had to tell us to, climb trees. We did that instinctively. We would climb trees. We would ride bikes. We would play in the mud. We would get dirty. That's what kids did. But it just seems that now it's just the opposite, So now you gotta beg the kids to get outside, because now we have all these, I guess, technological devices that became more of the cornerstone of, child's, interactions with each other. Education is using education, it's just different. But, as I started to get older, I'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would tell me I had a vitamin D deficiency, so, I had to do research and find out, well, what's that about? And, they want to give me a vitamin D shot. I'm like, nah, hold on to the shot for a minute. Let me just go spend some time in the sun. 3 months later, I go back 3 months later, get the test, vitamin D is good. So, it's unfortunate that in many ways we've just gone backwards as far as just simple things, just simply getting out in nature, just grounding, getting your feet on the ground. I mean, this is what we did as kids. It seems like we're losing that, but it's always better to just get closer to nature, man.
Yeah. And what about the dietary side of things? Is there any particular, there's this whole section on shopping carts full of symptoms and things like that. Is there any particular dietary model you follow from your own evidence base and things like that? Is there anything that you recommend as a global statement for people, or is it more individually advisable, or any big rules that you tend to follow, like processed food, for example?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, for the past 15 years, I've been plant exclusive, and I've, within the past 2 years, I've completed 2 full marathons and 2 half marathons, and I'm in the best shape of my life. And Nice. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made, bar none. Now when you look at, the States, over 70% of the food supply is coming from ultra processed foods. And these ultra processed foods have been linked to, cancer, neurological disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes, you name it. And that chapter that you're referring to, when I'm out and I'm looking at the shopping carts around me, they're filled with these ultra processed foods. And, it's really no mystery why we have, 70, 75%, depending on what metric you're using, of the population overweight or obese. And that's only going to get even higher. And then you look at 60% or more of the average population on 1 or 2 prescription medications. We're really not going in a good direction. So yes, a lot of that is attributed to the shopping carts that I see. The average American, at least, consumes at least a ton of food a year. So there's really no way that you can put that amount of food in your body and it not have some type of direct reflection on your health. So that's a serious problem. And I tried to raise some type of awareness in that chapter and other chapters, because it's what I see every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Scary statistics. And behind the statistics, like you said, it's only getting worse, isn't it? And the UK is very similar to America. There's obesity issues, there's type 2 diabetes issues, and all of the health outcomes from all of that negativity. And I do wonder myself how much of that would be completely avoided or reversed if just processed food was something that people really, vast majority of the time stayed clear of, to be honest. Yeah. You've also talked about exercise as well, but also just globally moving more as well, because that's part of getting outdoors more, isn't it, as well? But we're both sat down at the moment, but I try not to be stationary for very long and keep going, and even if it's just short walks here and there. But how significant did you find that from your own research and just not even dedicated time to exercise, but actually being more active on a general stage?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself like extremely athletic, especially when I, look at my peers, but not everyone is going to be running marathons. Not everyone's going to be doing endurance events. So when you look at the areas of the world, they call them blue zones, whatever you want to call them, where you see large amounts of the population that are, you know, in their 90s, centenarians, what have you. You know, they're not going to gyms, you know, they're not going to box gyms, they're just moving, you know what I mean? They have to go to see their friend and they're going to walk 2 miles easily, you know. They're working in their gardens, they're growing their own food, you're squatting, going to the soil, you're bringing water from one location of the garden to the next. Some populations, they don't even have chairs in the house. When it's time to sit, they sit on the floor. So when you sit in the floor, as opposed to when you sit in a chair, you have to have a different posture, you know? So these are what, you know, these populations are doing. And, you know, stretching, a lot of us are really tight, and we're not doing yoga. These are practices that have been, you know, going on for thousands and thousands of years. And a lot of us have just lost the ability to do it. We don't have the knowledge to do it. It's not reinforced in our education system. So yeah, we're not moving. And if you're not moving, then you're only going to be getting older, man. That's the quickest way to get old, is to not move and to not stretch. So yeah, whether it's just walking is fine, or just doing some type of activity, driving less. I mean, here in the States, if you live in a metropolitan city, you're driving everywhere, you know. But when I talk to my family members who have traveled to Europe and other places, there are people that they bike everywhere, they walk everywhere. They're not driving cars everywhere. They're not stuck in traffic, hours of traffic. I mean, that really wears on the human body. So it is important to get out there and do some type of movement. You know, if you like it, you're going to tend to stay at it. But if you don't like going to the gym, you're only going to go to the gym for a couple months. You're going to stop.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting as well. The problem can be is that a lot of people have desk jobs. Like when I was a family doctor, so a GP, I remember being sat at my desk, for like 4-hour-long clinics, and it would be rare that you'd get 10 steps in between, you know, because the patient was like one after another. There was no gaps, and that's a big difference I've noticed since becoming more sort of freelance. Is that essentially my step count is so much higher, and it's not a coincidence that I feel a hell of a lot better in myself. You know, like you said, less stiff, younger in general. Really, it's quite incredible the change, that something you wouldn't even give it too much thought. Oh, just move a little bit more, but actually it can make a massive difference. Yeah. So how do people, what sort of clients are you getting on a regular basis, Will? Does it tend, when you say about holistic sports nutritionist and coach and things, does it tend to be athletes that come to see you, or does it tend to be people from the general public? How does it tend to work for your clients?
Yeah, at the current moment, it's typically the average person who's working a desk job. So someone who's, you know, probably in their, I guess, between their 40s and 60s, they've been working a desk job. They've been, you know, stuck in hours of rush hour traffic. And they finally come to the realization that, you know, they're losing their functionality, and they want to try to figure out how to get more functional and how to be active while working their job. Because, you know, some people have to be with a job because they may have a family, or they may have obligations. But that's who I'm currently working with right now for the most part. People who are overcoming injuries, whether it be hip replacements or knee replacements, things like that. In the near future, actually, I do plan to work with more athletes, and I want to actually focus on strength and conditioning and endurance athletes, you know, since I'm gaining more experience myself in that arena. But yeah, that's pretty much who I'm working with, is individuals that are looking to reverse the damage that's been done to them by sitting down for long periods of time.
Yeah. You're working on nutrition as well as movement, exercise, the whole shebang, I imagine. From reading the book, I imagine you take quite a rounded view of everything, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I've noticed that, you know, there's individuals that they'll focus on the nutrition aspect, and they're not really doing the fitness part. And you have to do both. And then there's other people, you know, vice versa, who are just doing the fitness and they're not doing the nutrition. You have to do both. And I would even add to that the flexibility aspect of it too. You have to, you know, you have to stretch more. I mean, males typically don't like to stretch as much as females do. We just want to just get in there and just lift the weights and do whatever. But we have to do all of it as much as we may not like to do it. So yeah, I do focus on the strength training you know, resistance training aspect, the nutrition, you know, just really focus on nutrient dense foods and hydration. That's really one of my points of emphasis, and yeah, definitely the flexibility as well.
Yeah. That flexibility isn't often not talked about too much online or by a lot of coaches out there that I watch, and you do feel that people are missing out on something there. Just some sort of movement based around stretching out the body, getting it flexible rather than all tight and knotted. Like you said about when people are sat at their desks for prolonged periods of time, one of the big factors, like you rightly point out, is the fact that you end up feeling stiff and not quite right in terms of flexibility. Yeah. So where can people find you, Will, if people have watched this and thought, hey, I want to work with this guy? And do you work sort of nationwide? Is it telemedicine? Is it online phone calls as well? Or is it in person?
Yeah, so that's one thing that by the end of this month, I'll be doing online. I'll be doing all of that. So it'll be real easy to get in contact with me. Right now, I'm just doing a lot of local clients, but yeah, definitely going to be doing just everybody. And the best way to find me is at trueironwill.com. So that's TRUEIRONWILL.com.
Brilliant. Well, we'll link that in the description of the video below so people can find that. And what about the book? Where's that best to get? I can't remember. I think you sent me a copy, so I was a bit lucky there. So how do people find it? There we go. Yeah.
So it's Young in Any Age, Secrets to Slowing the Aging Process, and you can find that on Amazon.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I highly recommend it because, like I said before, it's not just the science. It's actually told in a way which is partly like reading a novel, as well, like a story, as well as learning about things. So it's not so purely scientific. So it's a good read in general as well. Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Will, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure it's been useful for a lot of people listening.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Have a good day.